Okay, everyone. Well, welcome to another episode of Line Your Own Pockets. I had some really cool kind of conversations. I liked a lot of the last one, talking to Bella and all of that. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about a trader that Dave knows who has an interesting way of taking a model that he's built and transitioning it live. We talked a little bit about this kind of off screen. I thought it was interesting, so I just wanted to flip the camera live. Completely different from, I think, both of our methods, which is one thing that's really cool when it comes to this kind of trading, is that you're not hearing someone do something completely different and like faux pasing it. I think it got both of me and Dave thinking a bit. So why don't you go into this trader and why he's so different and what we can learn from it?
Yeah, so this is a guy that trades at SMB Capital, somebody I've known for a while, and really interesting guy. We talk a good bit. His name's John M. I'm not gonna say his last name, but John M. Um, he trades about I think like 35 different models. He's got 35 different models running live. He's been
So
doing this a while.
let's I think that's a great place to start. So first of all, I think highlights the benefit one of the benefits of systematic trading, because there's no way a human being could trade 36 different trading styles without some extreme level of systemization. Now, when it comes to those models, if you know a little bit about them, is how much are, when I hear 36 models, I think, okay, is one just a variation of another, right? Is it like all gap strategies and just different variations of them, or are these just like he's found 36 unique edge opportunities in the market over his years of doing it?
I don't know, but my sense is that he has a wide variety of models here. Probably some overlap a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
he, this isn't like one idea split up 36 different ways. He's got a very well-rounded intuition about the market. So a lot of these I'm sure are somewhat correlated, but a lot of them I'm sure are not correlated. And he's got a whole to-do list of new models that he's working on. So, and that's the biggest problem he has is prioritizing the stuff he wants to work on.
And I love that, as again, just to demonstrate it, there's no physical possible way a discretionary trader could do that. But also it shows that you're not running out of work, which I think is something weird that happens the more I talk to system or try to get people into systematic trading. They think they're going to be like, "Oh, I'm putting myself out of a job." But if that guy's got 36 models and tons that he still wants to test and potentially build and deploy, it just shows you that you're not getting replaced there. You're just moving to something else. He's spending his day now probably full. He probably could work 12 hours a day if he wanted to on testing and building new things. And also just shows there's just so many different ways to skin this cat that you're not going to be trading the same model someone else is. You're just
Yeah.
not going to. There's just so many different ways to do it.
It kind of reminds me of when we started this podcast. Remember, I came to you with this idea, and you were like, are we going to run out of ideas here?"
I did.
I'm like,
Yeah.
"I don't think so." And
Yeah.
I think, I guess it's, as we've shown here, we've been going for more than a year, and our list is growing. Our to-do list is
Hmm.
growing of stuff we want to talk about. So
Yeah. No,
I
you
think
you
it's the
were
same way with trading.
you were right, and that was a conversation. I remember you called me and you said we should do I don't know many systematic traders that have front facing or public facing kind of identities, and I'm like, yeah. And in my head, I was thinking, what do you do? Maybe 10 or 20, and then you start running out of ideas. And Dave was like, no, trust me on this, and yeah, 100% right.
Yeah. And I think it's the same way with trading models and trading strategies. They just like, as you get them, as you get them live, as you start watching them, once you have a good process, you never run out of ideas. It's like I said, this guy's got 35 models, and his biggest problem is he has more ideas than he can deal with, and he's trying to figure out how to deal with that.
And what an amazing
So
problem to have, because you hear this all the time with people, and we did a whole thing on it on like edge erosion, and things like that of, oh, I have this thing that I do and that thing makes me a lot of money, and then the fear of what happens if that thing stops working and stops making me money. This guy doesn't have that, because if he's constantly working, eventually you only have so much capital. So of those 36 models, there's not going to be one model that's doing 95% of his income. So if one model just stops performing, that's okay, because he's just constantly, working on the other side to shore that up.
Yeah. So he has a very interesting way that he goes live with models. So you can imagine he's got to have a pretty tight process to manage all this.
Yes.
He uses GitHub, like you and I have talked about before, which is great. I want to do some more content around that, because it's probably, I think, the most underrated tool for active systematic traders. It's really just fantastic when you use it right. So at this point, I want to make sure listeners go back to our episode where we talked about the different versions of a strategy, like which way is the best way to trade this strategy. You can probably find the title of it more quickly than I can, but I think that's a good one to go back and think about, because some of the things we talked about in that episode are going to be turned on its head based on the way John operates. So basically the approach is, you've got a strategy, you've got an idea, you've done a back test. John is a big strategy cruncher user. So he uses the cruncher to figure out where the strategy has edge. And you get multiple versions of a strategy. And you try, that's basically what you're doing. You're trying to decide, okay, what version of this strategy should I go live with? And what we talked about on that episode was starting from a wider starting point, and trading something small, but with more trades going through it, with the thought that once you get that live, you'll watch it, you'll figure out over time the real-time trades that come through. You'll start having more intuition, and you'll be able to apply a rule that jumps out at you and makes sense to you from that point. So John takes a different approach.
Okay.
He takes the approach of very quickly optimizing something, coming up with a smaller subset that looks really good in the back test. He's not even thinking that much about curve fitting. Like, he just wants to get something that is a small subset that looks really good, with the thought that, yeah, there's probably going to be a little bit of curve fitting there. He's going to go back. Definitely going to go back later and really dial in the rules. But instead of going live with a really wide net, he's going with a much smaller subset, with the express intent of watching that small subset and widening it over time. So I thought it was just such a great approach. It's something that I've not thought about it quite in those terms. And there's a lot of trade-offs which we'll get into, but I want to hear what you think about that, Michael.
Yeah. So first, I did look up the episode, and it's just on YouTube, called "Which Systems to Trade." And the idea is that you presented a bunch of systems, one that had a lot of trades, one that had a little trades, and we kind of said, okay, generally speaking, you go with that wide net and then narrow it in. And just to reiterate, he's doing the exact opposite. So he's almost intentionally curve fitting, I could say, would maybe make sense, where he is just show me the equity curve that looks the best, that only trades a little bit, and then go from there. My initial reaction, I was kind of, if this was just some guy off the street, I think I probably wouldn't have thought as deeply about it. But the fact that it's a successful trader who's got multiple strategies, who obviously does this is how he feeds himself. It made me think of the reasons potentially why. So that was going to be my main question of what do you think is the key advantage to this? Because my worry is that by doing this, when it comes to tracking the trades in real time, you're tracking only the trades that you took. So what you might find if you kind of curve fitted in a weird way is that you look at the strategy and you trade it and you're like, okay, these trades aren't very good, but you're only tracking that small subset of trades you actually took, whereas the rest of them in kind of that wider net may have been good. And then also, I think what really irks me is just as a stats guy, it's like the antithesis of what you're taught, which is that you always want to, you know, if you're surveying the average height of a person, you just want to ask as many people from as many broad sections of whatever
Yeah.
as you can. So, but because, right, we know this guy and we know he's successful, it's I want to dive in deeper and see. I don't know, maybe something I'll keep an eye on. So, what does he think the main benefit of doing it this way is, as opposed to the normal or traditional way?
Um, I can see a couple different advantages here. So think about when you have a new idea. You're still what I call, stuck in backtest world. You're stuck in the theoretical.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you have a perfectionist tendencies, you're going to stay there a long time thinking about, okay, which rules to apply, which rules not to apply. I could apply this and basically get the same set of trades. I could apply this and get the same set of trades. Like you're almost stuck with several good decisions you can make, but like which one do you make? So
I always like to compare this to the new trader who's, and we've all seen it, who's got like a billion different indicators on his screen, and he gets stuck never taking a trade because he's like, well, the RSI is telling me this, and the MACDs and the moving average telling me this, and it's that analysis kind of paralysis that you get.
Yeah.
And I think our version of that is just what you mentioned, is that you're constantly tweaking with the strategy as opposed to just go. So that I could see as a big benefit, is that you're just you're from back test to trading in like a day, like just let's get to it kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think this is an advanced move. Um, it's not for beginning traders and I think that's mainly because you don't have beginning traders don't have a good process for doing the kind of analysis that allows you to look at the trades just beyond the boundaries of your rules to see where there's edge that you could add. That's a really hard thing to be able to do. And what you were saying earlier, you're only taking what you're seeing. So it's hard to see beyond that unless you have a really good process for it. And by this point, John does have a really good process for that. So I like the fact that I like the fact that it's kind of a shortcut to going live. It's like another step that prevents you from being stuck in this backtest world where you're not actually making progress, and not making the steps toward doing the real learning once you start trading live. So I like this. I like this approach, but I wouldn't suggest it for everybody.
So I guess that already dispelled my kind of first fear of it, I guess, is that he's got a way to go and probably, and this is as I was saying it, I was thinking of it, he could very easily run the back test for that day and then run it wide, run it without a lot of the optimizations in it, to see the trades that he didn't take, to see if he, was sad that he didn't take them, or whether he was okay doing it. So that makes sense. And I really do like the idea of just get in there and trade, because when we talked about this a couple times, that I would rather take a strategy that's suboptimal and at least paper trade it if you're not comfortable doing it with real money, and just start that process quickly, because like we've mentioned, is that you don't know what you don't know until you're into it. And sometimes by doing that and saying, okay, yes, now that I'm in it and it makes sense to me, now I'm going to be more interested in it. I can notice things as the trades come in. I can notice maybe some problems that may arise by actually seeing it trade. So that's one big benefit, is he's going to be live trading way faster than someone who went slower. But other than that, because I could see like what's stopping you from just doing that anyway, right? What's stopping you from just doing one little optimization that narrows it a little bit and doesn't really curve fit, and then getting into it.
Yeah. So when the more I started thinking about this, preparing for this episode, the more I knew we were going to start talking about curve fitting, which we have. We got a whole series of episodes I want to do on that because it is
Hmm.
by far the most misunderstood topic. People kind of go crazy talking about it, and there's all this gibberish that people say about it, which doesn't make any sense in the real world. So it's uh, so the fact that he's quote unquote curve fitting a little bit to make a strategy live, I don't put any stock into. Like, curve fitting is so overrated. I hear so many traders just completely stuck by curve fitting in a way that they should not be.
And then, I think that also goes to your point that this isn't a new person. So he's not going to when I think of curve fitting, it's a good series to do, I think. But when I think of curve fitting, I think of someone putting in something that would be just like stupid. Like he's trying to scalp for a minute and he's put in like, what's the dividend yield last year or
Yeah,
something ridiculous.
right.
So
Yeah.
the fact that this person is an experienced trader, there's a certain level of the columns are telling him one thing, and he is, though it's really really quickly, he's checking that off in his brain that, okay, that makes sense. He's not going to throw something in there just because the number does it. But just kind of for argument's sake, the fact that like narrowing it down that quickly, you mentioned that, hey, he gets to trade it quickly, but I think you could do that with a wide back test as well, right? Couldn't you? You put in one filter or two filters, and he could still go with
Yeah.
it. So then
Sure.
why go that tight that quick?
Okay, so here's a problem that I've run into that could be avoided. So if you got a lot of models and you go forward with one with a wider net than you think is really optimal, but
Hmm.
just in the interest of moving things along, you put it live. Let's say that one trades for a while and it doesn't do well because, and it's probably because of the wide net. Like, you're taking too many trades. If you and then let's say some time goes by and you kind of forget what you were thinking about that, and you're just looking at in comparison to some of your other models. If you've got a whole bunch of models, it looks like it's going to suck bad compared to the other ones, right?
Hmm.
And if enough time has gone by, you're in a completely different context. You've like, your mind is completely in a different context, thinking about another strategy. Probably you kind of forgot a little bit. You're not in the zone about this one strategy, and really, unless you've taken really good notes and documented them in GitHub, like I recommend traders do, you're not going to have the same context. So, and when you see an equity curve that's going down, or like much worse than the back test, man, it really seems like, wow, that sucks. The strategy sucks. Like, it's not doing what I thought it was going to do. Like, there's something about that is going to kind of rule the day in your mind. And you're like, man, this strategy sucks. But so you avoid that situation by taking this other approach, which I think would be good.
See, now that makes a lot of sense to me. And again, more context of him being a a professional trader with lots of strategies is that he's not, if you were a new trader coming in, you're comparing your strategy versus like zero, right? You're saying, okay,
Yeah.
this strategy makes money, the money sitting under my mattress does not. When you're a professional with 36 strategies in it, you're comparing your strategy versus all the other ones, right? This strategy that he just made could be good and have like a 1.5 or 1.25 profit factor, which for a losing trader, you give them a 1.15 profit factor. It's better than nothing. But if he's comparing that to a whole bunch of 2 profit factors and it's 1.25, then he goes, okay, it sucks. So that makes a lot of sense, where he's the bar to become something interesting to apply his limited capital to is higher than it is for someone who's just coming there and has a whole bunch of free capital already, and anything that makes any amount of money for them is a good thing. So that to me makes a lot of sense, where he's going to try to refine that down really quickly, because if not, it's almost like he wouldn't be motivated to monitor it as well. It's almost like the argument that people make for paper trading, where if you're paper trading, you don't have anything on the line. you're just not as motivated to really do the work. But if you're someone like, like him, he's like, well, I can risk real money with it, even though it might not be a huge amount of money, because I just need to get it above that bar of everything else I'm doing, so that it gets the time and attention that it deserves.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought about, I think it's a phase you go through. You mentioned paper trading there. I think it's a phase you go through where early on you're like, yeah, paper trading, I don't really like it. Like you progress to a point where you're like, yeah, I need some money on the line, right? But I think as you progress further and you get more models and you get, more perspective, I think you come to start liking paper trading again, because you realize that there's a path to, there's a path to confidence that it's almost like hobbyists don't like paper trading, but once you level up, you come to appreciate it again.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. It's because there is you know, I think it's only because what's the future holds if it works, right? That's the
Yeah.
big thing. Is somebody who's never made any money trading, it makes way more sense that they are you're like, okay, well, or have failed, I guess would be even better. They're saying, okay, well, everything else I've done sucked. So now I'm just doing something that in their mind has no ability to make the money, but you've been doing it for some time. You say, okay, yes, this does have the ability to make me money. It's just gonna take a bit, and then
Hmm.
kind of go from there. So that to me, again, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That why I just know from my experience at Trade Ideas and other places where we desperately have tried to get people, especially like unprofitable people, to paper trade, and just have not been able to do it, that it becomes really really hard to kind of force them to sit down and do it.
Yeah, I think it requires a little bit of humility that some new traders don't have. That uh, so you can understand the value of paper
Hmm.
trading again. Um, so it reminds me. There's this other phase that I don't think we've talked about this, but I wanted to mention this to get people's thoughts. So I was listening to a podcast about AI and LLMs, and they were predicting what the next few years are going to look like for LLMs, and
Okay.
the progress they're going to make. And at some point, they're going to become agentic, where they're doing their own stuff, right?
Hmm.
And they're doing things autonomously on their own without human intervention. At the beginning of that stage, there's a phase where they're going to have what they call poor research taste. So, what does that mean?
Mm.
They're going to have the ability to work on stuff, but they're not going to have enough discernment. They're not going to have enough intuition to be working on the right things. So they're going to have poor research taste. They're not going to be researching the right kind of things. They're still going to need some human interaction to point them in the right direction.
Okay.
I see a lot of traders who uh, don't have great strategy taste. Like they have some ideas, they've got uh, maybe a lot of ideas, but they're lower on the curve on this. Like they're basically not working on the right set of strategies yet. They're not thinking about the right set of strategies yet. Part of your development as a trader is improving your strategy taste. What are the things that are actually, not just fleeting thoughts, but strategies that are actually going to make money over time, strategies that you can have a path to confidence in, strategies that you can leverage up in. I mean, one of the things I like to say is the strategy that you're going to make the most money from in your trading career, you probably haven't thought of yet. And
Which is very
that's
hopeful, right? And you're not just saying that for the new trader, you're saying that for everybody, for
that's
whether you've
exactly
been,
right.
yeah, whether you've been doing it for a year or your entire life. You're right there, you still have that area to go.
And part of that, for that to be true, is you have to have a good process for evaluating strategies, and you have to be on this path of improving your strategy taste over time. And the more strategies you think of, the more strategies you test, the more traders you interact with, the better your strategy taste is going to get over time.
Now, going back to this person, do you think this is his way of kind of helping with that, or some knowledge that he has when it comes to that strategy taste, where he is going to much quicker and be more okay going with a base idea to really optimizing the crap out of it to trading it, because he's developed that taste way better than somebody who has just started? And I think another thing to ask is that other than just doing the work and building strategies and over time, for the inevitable question we'll get in the comments, which again, we love the questions in the comments, of how would you develop that taste? Now, if this guy's 36 strategies deep, for him it just seems like he's been doing it a long time. But if someone specifically had that mission in mind, what do you think would be the best way of going about doing that?
Yeah, I think the more strategies you interact with, the more strategies you test, the more strategies you test well enough to get live, the better your strategy taste is going to be over time. And John, I can tell, has excellent strategy taste. But I think that doesn't mean that he can get a lot better. And he's doing exactly the right thing to improve his strategy taste even more and to get better and better. I mean, I was on, there's a show that S&B puts on called Bionic Trader.
Mm-hmm.
I was on there about a month ago. And one of the things we talked about, Garrett and I, was, trading it's actually pretty easy if you don't really trade with a lot of size. The real hard part is, I mean, it's not easy, but it's much easier.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're trying to trade with a lot of size, you're trying to leverage something up, you have to come up with ideas that are worth and that you can recognize have the ability to scale. And if you're not thinking about that with every strategy you run, like, what is my path to confidence, which means what is the path where I can scale this strategy big time and make a lot of money from it? And what does a strategy look like where you can that has that ability? What does a strategy look like that doesn't quite have that ability? That's really the ultimate goal with what you're trying to do. It doesn't matter how many strategies you trade, really. What you're really looking for is ones where you can really scale up in a big way. That's going to make your career. That's going to make your, that's going to allow you to save for retirement and live the life that you want to live.
Yeah, the swinging the bat hard, as Bello put it. So, and that, I think, is also something that is possibly, I wouldn't say unique, but special to someone like that who trades, with kind of firm capital and things like that. And then the guys over at SMB, is they have to think about that, I think, way sooner and way quicker than everyone else. If you're someone out there who's got $100,000 or something you're trading, you need to think of the upward limits that are reasonable for you in a reasonable period of time. But if you're at a firm and they're like, listen, if your strategy is good enough, we'll give you millions and millions and almost unlimited capital until the strategy falls apart, that becomes a completely different kind of beast that you have to tackle. So what I think is a great takeaway from this and what this guy's doing is just saying that, hey, he's kind of figured out his unique set of circumstances and has found this tool to push them in. Because, like, as we said, probably not this whole going really, really tight, really, really quickly, probably isn't best for the new trader. It's probably not best for the guy who doesn't have any other strategies to trade. And it's probably not best, maybe even for the guy who doesn't have a lot of capital. But it to me shows that a lot of the systematic trading talk is like, oh, well, if you have the strategy, that's all that matters. You put the strategy and you plug that in, you make some money. And what we're talking about a lot here is that this person has a different set of circumstances and they're at a different stage in their trading career, and they have different capital that they have allocated to them. So the way they're going to do things is going to be different from somebody who's completely on the other end of the spectrum. And understanding that, just like, you know, you have to make the system your own, even if it's a system that you kind of got the idea somewhere else, you have to make your process for building systems completely your own based off your own set of circumstances and where you are.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing that John is doing is he's very intentionally seeking out other traders in the firm to collaborate with, you know, bounce ideas off of, work on an idea together. He's specifically working with another trader in the firm on that has I would say, a similar process, but not exactly the same. It's like in a different neighborhood, I would say.
Okay.
But they're able to talk each other's language, and they can help each other stretch in ways that each of them couldn't do on their own. So I think that a collaboration like that is quite good, as we've talked about many times on the show. You want somebody to collaborate with that you don't want a carbon copy of yourself. That's not going to really be helpful. I mean, that could maybe be helpful in the short term, but what you really want is somebody that brings a completely different set of skills to the table. And that's the sort of collaboration that can really yield some good results.
Well, and pushback, right? I always think the best, and we've even seen it with some of the numbers with the podcast. And sometimes the most fun ones is when we just completely disagree with each other, because you can disagree, and then but that's usually where kind of growth happens from. Is that, you know, you have two people with contrary opinions, and both of them are probably wrong, and then in the middle there somewhere there's something that is the correct thing, so you can do that. And I thought this was great. And again, the main takeaway, I think, for the listeners is just, you know, we'll talk about our process of doing things and bring on and talk about other people's process of doing things, but the important thing is that process is unique for you, where you are and what your goals are and what's your capital requirements, and, you know, how long you've been doing this, and all of that. So don't, just because somebody says, and maybe even someone that you greatly respect says, I do this way, then it doesn't mean that that's the way to do it. That's the way that person has found success with it. Doesn't mean that's the way you have to do it, and kind of take that and learn from it, and then maybe, you know, put in your own thing over time.
Yeah, it can be intimidating for new traders to, you know, hear us say, hey, just be unique, right? Like, being unique is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually, I believe, easier than most people think. Like, it's just, you know, be you, and you have a unique set of skills that nobody else in the world has. You've had a unique experience that nobody else in the world has and has ever will.
Mm-hmm.
So you bring something unique, you know, not just you, Michael, but everybody brings something unique that only they have the perspective to bring to bear. So it's not as hard as most traders think to be completely unique. In fact, you probably already are in a lot of ways, and you don't realize it.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a doctor's appointment, and there was like a medical tech there, and it was talking to me about, and I think she had seen me on something on YouTube or whatever, and we were talking about finance or whatever, and they said they were interested in getting into it, and, you know, wanted some advice. And I said, listen, you deal in medical sales your whole life. I was like, if you want to get into this, and it was more not day trading or anything like that, more, hey, I've got some money and I just want to put it in things. I'm like, you have knowledge in this sector that most people, 99% of the world, don't. So I'm like, you should stick there. I don't, don't invest in energy companies or something silly. Find companies that are making new medical devices or whatever inside of your niche, and focus really in on that. And then I met the person again, I think a year later, and they kind of thanked me for that advice. They're like, I'm not, I was following a guy who was reading charts or whatever, and I said, "Well, don't do that, right? You know this thing, so utilize that thing, and find the company that's going to disrupt the space, and put your money there."
Yeah. Yeah. So it reminds me of, more and more traders reach out to me they want me to coach them. And a lot of times the first thing I'll do is try to talk them out of it.
Mm,
Or, just understand, why they want me to coach them. What is their situation here? Like, let me give you 3 or 4 ways you could do this yourself without me. Um, so it does take people off guard a bit when I take that approach.
yeah. So, yeah, I think this was great. I think this is a good conversation. I think it should open some minds about, maybe find some different ways to do things. Did you have anything else to add? Looks like you're jumping there.
Yeah. So I think John's a great guy. I would love to have him on the podcast at some point.
Well,
So
John, if you're listening, come on over.
yeah, we'll figure out how to make that happen at some point because he's super fun to talk to and a really interesting guy. He'd be great on here.
Cool.
We'll see what
And
we can do.
yeah, and I love the different ways of doing things, right? Especially when there's a record of proven success. Means whatever you're doing, it might not be good for me, it might not be even optimal in general, but at least the perspective is unique and it works. Therefore, there's kind of a way to go with it, and a way that that has made sense for you. So, yeah, as always, appreciate everyone for coming by, and I'm Michael Doss.
And I'm Dave May. We'll talk to you next week on Line Your Own Pockets.